as long as I can remember since I was a little boy growing up in Buffalo. The kids in school I struggled with the most were the kids that took up a lot of room. Not physically big kids, but outsized personalities. I just didn't have the tools then to find my own space. I've gotten better at it over the years, but it's still a button that gets pushed now and then. I've come to understand it's up to me as an introvert by nature to take responsibility for claiming the space I feel is necessary while never forgetting to make room for others. Of course, there is no one who has the capacity to fill space like God. After all, our tradition teaches us God is everywhere, God is infinite, there is no place without God. Which makes the Israelites' wilderness building project of the portable tabernacle, the portable sanctuary, that begins in this week's parasha, Terumah, it makes it quite curious. By the way, what a treat it will be to hear Jessica and Talia Udelman read from the Torah portion tomorrow morning as they become Benot Mitzvah. Now back to our regularly scheduled program. God says to Moses this week, Va'asuli mikdash v'shachanti betocham. Make me a sanctuary that I may dwell amongst them. The 16th century mystic, Rabbi Isaac Luria, from the ancient Israelite city of Safat in the northern Galilee, raised the question, how could there be room for anyone other than God in the sanctuary God is requiring the Israelites to build? And Luria gives a radical answer. He taught that the existence of the world is made possible only by an act of contraction or withdrawal. A contraction or withdrawal on God's part. This process of divine self-contraction is what Luria called tzimtzum. And it is what makes the existence of the world possible. That's it. A simple yet bold idea of who God is and the very purpose of human existence. Luria, lacking no chutzpah, presents God as actually depending upon humanity to fill that space God makes room for. In this particular case, the sanctuary. Sanctuaries like ours, no longer portable, though this one lasts beautifully remodeled on Lee Harris's watch as the president of Temple Solel. The sanctuary experience that Luria and the mystics imagined for human beings was not a removal from the brokenness of the world, rather a deeper engagement with the world. Worship to God, back in the day through animal sacrifice, thankfully for the last 2,000 years in the form of prayer, were never about pleasing God or changing God's mind. The experience of prayer is to change our minds, to help elevate us to our highest selves. Prayer is not a request that God shower us with gifts from above. prayer is a call to draw upon all the resources available to us to meet life's challenges. So, brothers and sisters, as Rabbi Luria is challenging us to consider, how are we filling the space God has made for us? What are we praying for tonight? In my 10th year, blessed to serve as your rabbi, it makes me sick to think of the number of times I've tried to lead this community in prayer, grieving over the latest victims of gun violence, offering prayers of healing for families and survivors, offering prayers of solidarity to fellow clergy, tending to the brokenness within their community, reading the names of those murdered before the mourner's Kaddish. So tonight, yes, we pray in all those ways. Yet, we can't just pray. And we can't capitulate to those who say it's too soon to talk about gun reform, that it's a sign of disrespect to the dead to use a tragedy to score political points. No, it's disrespectful to the dead to continue business as usual in our country. It is nothing short of a desecration of God's name to protect the status quo, let alone digging a deeper hole. God did not make room for us to pray in our sanctuary, only to stand on the sidelines. This week, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel of blessed memory, one of the great prophetic voices of the 20th century, Rabbi Heschel looked me directly in the eyes and said, "In a free society, some are guilty, yet all are responsible." Heschel fled Germany for America at the beginning of World War II. Much of his beloved family murdered in the Holocaust. Heschel never blamed God. Heschel was clear. God is not responsible for such unimaginable cruelty. Humanity is responsible. So tonight, dear friends, we ask ourselves in our Mishkan, our sanctuary, how are we choosing to fill this space? God makes space for human agency. We have the freedom and the power to impact our world, our country, our state, our city, our congregation in significant, yes, life-saving ways. Actually, the only way to experience God, to bring more of God back into our sanctuary and our lives, is when we act in a way that invites and merits such divine company. Our relationship with God is directly proportional to our relationship with one another. At a minimum, how can we look at the children in our community in the eye and tell them we are doing everything we can to keep them safe. Since 1970, approximately 1.4 million Americans have died from gun violence, including suicides, more than in all the wars in American history going back to the Revolutionary War. And I'm looking at my dear friends Steve and Judy Good in the trenches, really in the trenches in Chicago for gun reform. This is not just about gang members. In a typical year, more preschoolers are shot dead in America than police officers. How can we look our children in the eyes and tell them we are doing everything in our power to keep them safe? There is no greater mitzvah in Judaism than pikuach nefesh, to save a life. Shabbat itself takes a backseat to pikuach nefesh, saving a life. Our tradition does not ask us to be martyrs, yet we're commanded not to stand idly by the blood of our neighbors. So you figure out for you who our neighbors are. In a free society, some are guilty and all are responsible. So tonight is surely not too soon to draw a line in the sand and say, you fill in. Enough is enough. Unless we do so, we are complicit. If not now, when? Yes, we will mourn, we'll pray, lower flags at half-mast, read the names of the most recent children, teachers, and coaches murdered by gun violence. Yet, God has not made room for us to turn our backs on coming up with tough solutions. We are well aware of the arguments and the money to protect the status quo, exacerbating the fracture in our country. Rabbi Langowitz wrote a moving message to the congregation this afternoon, included in it a link from the Reform movement for how we can and how we must become involved. So we hear these words, V'asuli migdash v'shachanti b'tocham. Make me a sanctuary that I may dwell amongst them. God is making room in our sanctuary for us to serve and make a difference in the world. What are we doing to make room for God to be our partners?
God, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. With thanksgiving, I'll be a living ועשוני מקדש ושכנתי בתוכם ואנחנו נברך יה מעתה ועד עולם. God, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. With thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for